Hey, entrepreneurs, let's talk about to-do list anxiety, where you've got more things on your to-do list than you know you're capable of accomplishing in the time that you've got available, or it's just this constant buildup that starts to really bother you, that you know there's all of these things waiting for your attention. You've got this backlog, and it creates this feeling of never being finished. It creates the sensation of obligation failure, that you're always behind, and it can add unnecessary stress to your life. Let's talk about how to eliminate that. I'm just going to share my screen and walk you through just a very simple step-by-step formula that will get rid of that to-do list anxiety. All right, so the first thing you want to do when you start having anxiety about your to-do list is just stop. Don't rush into it, because what will happen is you'll try to knock out a bunch of the small things that give you this dopamine rush of having checked them off, and you won't do the most important things, most likely. Now, once in a while, if someone's to-do list is short enough, you can get rid of that to-do list anxiety by literally doing everything that's on your to-do list, by just plowing in and finishing it all. But what I'm talking about here is the scenario where really realistically, there's either days or weeks, potentially months of things that you won't possibly be able to get all of it done. And so really what we're talking about is prioritization, cutting out the stuff that's not important, so you can make sure that you first prioritize and do the things that matter most. But the first step is just to stop. Don't rush in and try to get stuff done. You want to create a sequence of attack, right? So what that means is you're slowing down to think, which is a theme we come back to again and again in these micro productivity challenges. So what we're going to do is we're going to first separate your have to from your want to. So that requires a brain dump. You're just going to get it all on paper. Something like Workflowy that I'm looking at here is a great tool because you can drag and drop. First, you just write everything down, then you can drag and drop into the order of sequence or put it in different kinds of buckets as you want. But the idea is get it out of your head, out of the back of your mind, because it does build up. In essence, it's as if you have a RAM, like in a computer's RAM. If you get too many programs running all at once, none of them are very effective. We find that there's that same effect in the human mind. If you've got too many things in your to-do list that you're holding in your working memory, even if you're not consciously thinking of it literally in your working memory, it still is in the back of your mind, and you can actually release some of that mental clutter by putting it on paper and trusting and knowing that it's all right here. Then you can slow down to think, you can prioritize and do a lot better. So first is separate your have to from your want to. So if nothing else, after you've done that brain dump, got it all on one sheet, take the stuff that is like, oh, I'd love to get to this. This is a cool idea. I want to read that book, or I want to check out that new software. Drag that down to underneath a column or a section that says want to. And we're going to just try to separate that from the stuff that you really have to do. So that's going to reduce the anxiety right there. Just knowing what you really have to focus on is a smaller list. Then what I want you to do is create something I call a maintenance task sequence template. And this is something that you're going to use day after day or week after week. And it looks something like this. It's a piece of paper sitting on your desk, or it could be electronic, but actually for this, because you're going to reference it so often, I think it's better if it's just a piece of paper, and it just has categories of things you need to get finished. So if like paying your team is on there, that's something that you do every week. You might have pay team on here. And then only after that's done, you're going to pay off credit cards. Let's say you're a media buyer who's doing big numbers and you've got to pay off those credit card balances on a daily basis to be able to have the spend necessary to keep going. Well, that's pretty urgent, right? So this is essentially, when I say maintenance task list, I'm talking about the stuff that has to get done just to maintain the cash flow you've built for your business. So that means paying your team, paying off credit cards, essentially the urgent stuff, right? And what we want to do is recognize that list of urgent things that really needs to get your attention, it's smaller than you think. And so we want to compress it down. We want to make an actual list, and then we're going to drag and drop them into the order of priority. Now you might say, well, what paying my team, I only do that twice a month. And paying my credit cards, I do that every 2 or 3 days, and it just kind of depends. So when you go through this list, it might have like 15 or 25 things on it. If you read paying your team, and it's not the 1st or the 15th or whenever that needs to get done or approved, you mentally check that off and move to the next thing. Pay off credit card. Nope, don't need to do that today either. That means I can come up with some new ad creatives, right? So this list it's going to have things that you don't necessarily need to do every day on it, but it will tell you the sequence in which to do them if they do need to be done. So what you're doing here is you're essentially creating a checklist that you'll refine over time. You'll start to notice that, oh, I really should drag that one higher because that one didn't get done. On the days when that does need to be finished, that is really mission critical. And what you'll find is you'll start to notice there's categories. There might be, for example, admin, general admin and business infrastructure, things like filing the taxes, that might be a recurring maintenance task. So again, if you haven't heard me talk before about maintenance tasks versus progress tasks, maintenance tasks, these are things that just have to get done to maintain your current cash flow. They're not all the things that you'd like to do to build your next project, to increase the efficiency of your systems, finding a new team member to hire. Those are all progress tasks. And so this list should only have maintenance tasks, meaning the stuff that you just have to do again and again on a recurring basis just to keep everything going in your business until maybe at some future point you replace yourself in that role, hire a CEO or some team members to take some of these things off your plate. But by making this recurring maintenance task sequence template, and the key word here is template, you're going to reuse this all the time. You'll be amazed at how much it takes the stress off if you can look at this template and just recognize that there's not that many things to do, and this is the correct order to do them in. So that means if you get only to item 5 out of your 10 items before you have to go do something else, before you run out of time, that means you did the most important things. And so it takes a lot of stress off of you just having this. It's a little bit like there's going to be things on here that you won't do every time. Just like a pilot going through his checklist before takeoff might have de-iced the wings. Well, on a 70-degree day, he knows he can skip that, right? Or he can check it off as not important today. So there's going to be things like that on there, but just knowing that it's there, it prevents you from having the stress and anxiety of, what am I forgetting? Because on the day when that pilot does need to de-ice the wings, he's glad he's got that checklist there to remind him to do that, so he doesn't skip that step and try to take off with ice on the wings. So this has a great effect on just decreasing our overall stress, but it also has an effect of increasing your efficiency, because you can really quickly see which items you could bring in help or automate or delegate in some way, or in some cases even delete some things off of this list. It also increases your efficiency by bringing into one list a number of things that you can do really quickly, and you can compress them over time by trying to get faster at them and do something I call reverse time boxing, where you try to force them into a small space in your schedule. Maybe on Tuesdays and Thursdays, you have an hour and a half or 2 hours dedicated to these kinds of recurring maintenance tasks. So once you have that recurring maintenance task template done, now you know what you have to do, right? And so what we want to do at that point is these 3 steps. We want to temporarily pause everything you don't have to do. So stop working on new ideas and big progress task ideas. Create that maintenance task order of priorities template, and then create a spot on your calendar that's reserved for those have to do lists of maintenance tasks. What will happen then is, even if you're not working on them now, you know that there's a spot for them, and that takes the stress off of the feeling that you're always behind or always forgetting something. And it allows you to be more effective at focusing on your progress tasks, because you know you have captured and compressed all of the things that have to get done, and there's a spot reserved on your calendar, so you don't have to stress about fitting them in here and there as they pop up. So this is the 3-step process. My challenge to you this week is to notice any time that to-do list anxiety starts to creep up. And if you have that, ask yourself, do I have a place to capture all of the various things that need to get done? A list of maintenance tasks, a list of progress tasks I'd love to get to someday. And can I relieve some of that pressure by just slowing down to think, creating a checklist to relieve some of the stress of feeling like there's stuff slipping through the cracks that you maybe forgot to do? And that's the point of creating that sequence, that maintenance task template. So if you notice some anxiety creeping up, use it as a cue to ask yourself, have I done this process well enough? Maybe you have something similar that's kind of like halfway, like I've sort of done that. I sort of have that list mixed between Asana and ClickUp and some notepad on my computer. Could you consolidate it? Could you bring it together in one place? Could you then take that snapshot of that and stick it in the calendar entry on Google Calendar or something, to where you click on that spot and it reminds you at 2 p.m. on Thursday, when your energy is kind of low anyway, you're just going to be following SOPs to do those recurring tasks. Can you put those somewhere on your calendar to where now the rest of the week you can let your creative energy flow, because you're not worried about those tasks? So remember that anxiety is not necessary. Showing up and giving time and randomness the opportunity to let your best ideas unfold, we want those two players on your team. We want time on your team. We want randomness on your team. In order to have time and randomness, you've got to stay in the game. And I find that entrepreneurs want to drop out of the game if the anxiety and the stress builds up too much. So don't ignore this. Treat your own well-being, your sense of wellness and psychological sanity and safety. Treat it like a high priority, the high priority that really is, because you're the engine that is running the entire business. So we want to put your needs first when it comes to keeping stress low so that you can stay in the game and continue to make far-sighted, wise decisions as you build your business. Talk to you again next week.